just when things started to look like they were going to spiral for the Buffs, they go on to upset one of the best teams in the country. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage, especially when there's moments like tonight when the Buffs, I think, stunned college football. I feel like that's a fair statement to make. I think just about everybody around college football, myself included, had them set to spiral. It seemed like after blowing back-to-back 14-0 leads against BYU, against TCU, that it was only going to get worse, right? They're in the toughest stretch of their schedule. They have Iowa State. They have Utah, two teams who are probably going to be, Iowa State was ranked and Utah's probably going to be ranked. And it just seemed like, okay, this is where the wheels start to fall off the wagon. And instead, the Buffs went out and made a statement. So this Iowa State team, I think a lot of people were hyping up a little too much. I was a little skeptical when I picked against Colorado this week. Because I hadn't seen much from Iowa State, but at the same time, I had seen so many issues with Colorado, but they needed this win, right? They win 24-17. I think they pretty much controlled the game for the most part. Obviously, Iowa State outgained them, but Colorado won the turnover battle. They won the time of possession battle. They had 140 yards rushing, which is fairly good for Colorado. Defensively, they did give up quite a few rushing yards, though. So there's that. But less penalties, which has been an issue for Colorado. And on third down, they were 7 of 15 compared to Iowa State's 2 of 12. So if you could sustain drives, if you could not commit penalties, if you could force turnovers, there's a good chance you're going to win the game. And for Colorado, they now find themselves sitting at 3-4 on the year where Colorado's in get to a bowl game mode, right? They're not. I think they'd still like to contend for the Big 12 title, but in the real world here, it is a possibility. There is mathematical possibilities, but you got to get to a bowl game first before you could contend for anything. So you're 3 wins away from a bowl game, which means you have to win 3 out of your last 5. And now that looks a lot more reasonable. You have Arizona, you have West Virginia, Kansas State, Arizona State. You don't know their quarterback situation with Sam Leavitt hurt. So for Colorado, a season that looked lost now looks a lot more manageable. Got a comment. And no, I did not bet against the Buffs. I picked them to lose the game. I had to do a prediction. Did not bet against them, though. We were talking about what they needed for the season. At the end of the day, Colorado, unlike any other team in college football, is probably going to face the most scrutiny regardless of what they do. So going on a multi-game losing streak like they did in the first year would have been catastrophic. I said this in my pregame preview of this game, that if they lost this game, I would expect coaches, whether it be coordinators, position coaches, to start losing jobs or to start seeing people moved around. I would expect to see certain positions, whether it be quarterback or whatever it is, to start being changed, right? You fall to 3-5 on the year, and this team is looking very different, right? Now you're 1 game away from being 500 again, which means you're basically a game away from being floating, right? You don't want to be drowning, but right now you're almost floating, and that's okay. I think a lot of people expected them to lose this game, and at the end of the day, Coach Prime said it himself after the game, what the difference was or how this win felt. He's like, it felt good. We actually made the plays, right? Colorado has come so close in the past 2 games to winning these games. It's just come between, you throw an interception here, or, you give up a trick play touchdown here, right? They were able to make the winning plays. And for this team this year, that has not been something that we've always been able to say. And it's kind of been the difference between them being, realistically, Colorado should be 6 or not 6. Yeah, they could be at 6-2, right? Instead, they're sitting at 3-4, right? Those losses against, Colorado can honestly be 7-0 at this point, had they not blown certain leads or blown certain plays, right? They had that TCU game at one point. They had the BYU game at one point. Georgia Tech, they had them dead to rights. Like they could very well be sitting at a completely different record. We're talking about them as one of the best teams in the Big 12. That being said, can't play the what-if game all day. So Colorado, they did what needed to be done on Saturday. I think this is a win that could sort of get the team going in the right direction. I think the team needed it to sort of show themselves that, like, hey, we are capable of doing this. I think there's times where in life where you start to struggle and you start to doubt yourself about, am I really good at this? And I think for Colorado, they were starting to get to that point where it's like, okay, do we have the right coaches? Do we have the right players? Do we have the right mindset? And I think this sort of silences those doubts, at least for now, right? The season's not over. You didn't win the bowl game. You didn't make it to the Big 12 championship just yet. But you did silence some of the doubts that they were likely having internally. We're going to take a quick break, but I'm going to highlight 3 guys, maybe 4, who stood out the most in Colorado's win on Saturday. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It is the weekend, actually. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break down. For Colorado, you got to go with Joseph Williams. The wide receiver from Tulsa had a career day, 8 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. And his touchdowns, they came at pivotal moments, right? It was a one-score game. They needed every single one of those big catches from him. So when the pressure was on, Joseph Williams came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke, and it's just been sort of culminating, right? Joseph Williams has been due for a breakout game. And just like Joseph Williams delivered for the Buffs, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first, or I guess on days like these, your last listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Let's talk about who stood out. I think the most obvious one is Caden Salter, the quarterback, who I think 80% of the population was expecting him to be benched. He played I think we could just call it a horrendous game against TCU, right? Throws 3 interceptions against BYU. He had thrown a late interception that was pretty costly and kind of it did end the game. So it killed Colorado's chances of a comeback. And so Caden Salter was sort of on this weird island of like, everyone knows he's good, but he hasn't been playing well for Colorado this season. So it was kind of like, okay, have we seen enough from this guy? And I thought there could have been a move for Julian Lewis. I thought there could have been sort of at least a decision to make with Caden Salter. But instead, he comes out, pretty solid game, right? 16-25 for 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, which is the kicker for him, right? That's sort of the big one. He completed 64% of his passes, didn't turn the ball over, made the plays when needed. He also rushed for 57 yards with a long of 24, right? So decisive, didn't make bone-crushing, soul-crushing mistakes, which has sort of been his issue this season. So shout out to Caden Salter. You bounce back, keep it up, right? We all saw Caden Salter at Liberty in 2023. Led them to the Fiesta Bowl, 13-1, 12-1, whatever the record was. And Conference USA MVP, had all these accolades. And all of a sudden, he just sort of isn't that guy anymore. We know that guy's in there, right? They just need to cater the offense to him. They need him to be more decisive, more confident, and make the right plays. And today he did just that. Next guy who I was really impressed with today, I'm going to give a shout out to him. This next person, he's not one of my standouts, but I did like that we saw some Cam McKell at running back. Only got 5 carries for 6 yards, but like that they're getting creative with all the injuries at running back. But that being said, there was a running back who I think has been running extremely hard lately and has sort of been a revelation of late, Dallin Hayden. 12 carries for 58 yards with a long of 17. They're not eye-popping stats, right? You're not going, oh, wow, Dallin Hayden had 58 yards. Let's write an article about it. But Dallin Hayden has been someone who I think has been missing lately, right? We get Colorado, gets him from Ohio State, and all of a sudden he's like tabbed as the next great one. And he's injured, doesn't play, banged up, and he's starting to make an impact. And I like to see how physical of a runner he is. He runs hard, which Colorado had an issue with at times last year where it felt like as soon as there was contact, they just stopped running. Dallin Hayden's going to run through a guy's face, or as Marshawn Lynch said, he's going to run through a insert blank here, face. And Colorado needs that toughness. They need that energy. Next guy, staying on the offensive side just because it was a career game from him, Joseph Williams. 8 catches, 128 yards, 16 yards per catch, a touchdown. I think I said he had 2 touchdowns earlier. That was my mistake. He had a touchdown though. 38 yards was his longest. Omarion Miller, he also had a really solid game. But Joseph Williams, I think he was sort of forgotten about. He was sort of like the exciting transfer that Colorado got at one point, and then all of a sudden people started talking about Sincere Brown. They started talking about Hakeem Williams. They started talking about other people. And I was like, okay, what about Joseph Williams? He was really good at Tulsa last year, freshman of the year, and we're sort of forgetting about him. And within reason, I guess, right? He had 2 catches against TCU, didn't really make an impact. Had 5 catches against BYU, 1 against Wyoming, 3 against Houston. So Joseph Williams hasn't been lighting it up. But today, breakout game for him, shows that like he could be the de facto number 1 receiver for Colorado, which they kind of have with him and Omarion Miller. It's a good problem to have, right? Last year they had Travis Hunter and LeJontay Wester, where it was kind of that 1A, 1B sort of situation. And if you're Colorado, the more weapons, the better. And Joseph Williams establishing himself as one of the premier receivers in the Big 12 is only going to help your chances. Last player who stood out to me, you got to go to Tafik Bayard, has been everything they've needed on the back end of the defense. Willing tackler, helpful in the run game. And today he came up with a big pick. Now, do I think there was pass interference behind him? Maybe. But a pick is a pick, and they picked the flag up, and we'll take it, right? He's been a leader on defense. They can rely on him. He makes big plays, and he just continues to sort of blossom into what Colorado needs in what is a pretty weak secondary. So those are my standouts. Comment below who you thought stood out the most. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's next for the Buffs, because you have to be able to build off this. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Mazda. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are the moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's Move the Game Forward, or the moment that moved the game forward, would have to be Omarion Miller's catch from Caden Salter. Wide open, 70-plus yard catch for a touchdown. Pretty big deal for Colorado, who's been struggling to create big plays. So shows that the offense is very capable of having explosive plays. Also played a pivotal part in them winning the game. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about what's next. Well, the Buffs have a bye week next week, right? So they have 2 weeks to prepare to take on Utah at Rice Eccles, which is one of the toughest places to play in college football. And, I mean, the bye week comes at a good time. And this win comes at a good time, right? You go into the bye week with a huge win. You go into the bye week with some confidence that you've been lacking. And who knows what they're going to look like at that point. I mean, they're playing Arizona State as I record this, and Jeff Sims is at quarterback. So blast from the past there. He's a 6-year senior. I think Jeff Sims is actually the same age as me, or pretty close to it, which is pretty insane for a college football quarterback. But I think Utah is probably going to be a top 25 team by the time Colorado heads over there. Utah's going to want revenge, right? Colorado beat the you-know-what out of them last year, and you have 2 weeks to prepare. You have 2 weeks to build off your confidence. You have 2 weeks to get people healthy because these Colorado injury reports are getting longer and longer by the week. They're starting to look like CBS receipts, and you need people healthy. You need people back and ready to make plays. And I think with the bye week, you got to prepare for Devin Dampier, right? Even though Colorado wins this game today, I mean, there's a glaring issue, and it's been a glaring issue all season. It's their run defense. Iowa State was without their top running back, but instead they had Abu Sama run for 24 carries for 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7.4 yards per carry. Rocco Becht, who's not the most mobile guy, ran for 31 yards. He was semi-effective with his legs on 7 carries, had a long of 19 yards, like 236 yards, right? I'm pretty sure Colorado's given up 200 yards rushing every game this season, and it's been a glaring problem. Well, Utah loves to run the football. They have arguably the most dynamic quarterback in the Big 12 in Devin Dampier. So if you can't figure out a way to stop the run like they haven't, you have to figure out a way to at least stop the bleeding. And I think 2 weeks to prepare to come up with a game plan on how to adjust to this. You're going to need every single moment of this 2 weeks to prepare for Devin Dampier, because when I tell you he's electric, he's like lightning in a bottle. Has 11 touchdowns for 3 interceptions this season. He's thrown for 1,000 yards. And then he's also rushed for another 2 scores, 258 yards. And I think teams all know how dynamic he is. And some teams have been able to key in on him. Like Texas Tech held him they rendered him useless in that game. But Texas Tech also has a $30 million roster and one of the best defenses in college football. Colorado does not have either of those things. So figure out a way to stop him. Celebrate this win while you can. And I think if you're Colorado, you just have to sort of turn what looked like an anomaly performance of making the right plays at the right times and turn that into something you can sustain. And all of a sudden, November rolls around, and we're talking about Colorado as a contender in the Big 12. So huge win for the Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day, or in cases like this, your last listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And I'll see you guys on Monday.